should know that. You need to get me there. And it didn't happen as fast as he wanted it to. Listen, you never know what situation's happening that causes the traffic jam. It could be serious.
Well, in this case, it was. A pedestrian was killed.
Right. And so it's like, sorry, man. Call the PGA. Tell them what's going on.
Well, and his side says he was in a PGA marked car with a hanging credential.
He can't go nowhere.
And they had a lane, I guess, designated to move the VIPs. Again, it's somewhat confusing, or very confusing, because you read one side and they say that, and the other side says, Scheffler didn't obey the police's orders, and from there, again, I don't want to say it got physical. I wasn't there, but one eyewitness says one thing, and another eyewitness completely contradicts it. But the bottom line is he got arrested, mugshot taken, charged with one felony and I think 3 misdemeanors. So,
I mean,
honestly, be the judge.
That's too much.
Yeah,
you didn't just sit there and back talk.
Right.
You just did.
And there's video out there on social media, him in handcuffs. Originally, he was being detained, but like I said, he then went. Louisville PD arrested him, took his mugshot, and charged him with these 3. And one, sometimes with these things, Tony, and you've been around a lot too, and you've heard and seen it all, but. And we're now in the day and age where, you listen to one side and it's one side trying with the narrative, or at least the way I read it, that the police overreacted, and then the other side is like they're just trying to do their job.
Well, it's actually a combination of both.
Right.
They're dealing with a dead person.
Right.
First of all, that's traumatic. I don't care what anybody says. I know cops are trained to handle situations like this. But they're human beings. All you ask at that moment is for a little patience. Okay? It may be a little bit longer than what you want, but it's needed.
Yep.
And just because you're Johnny superstar golfer, and you got to get your tee time, call the PJ up and say, listen, this is the situation. I don't know when I'm going to get through. Maybe the PGA makes a call to the sheriff's department.
The PGA had to be, because this was, the way I understand it, pretty much right outside the open, the road that leads into the country club. So they had to be aware of a traffic backlog. And, Pat Forty.
Well, and even if that's the case, the PGA should have came out immediately and took care of the situation.
Yep.
Scheffler overreacted himself. Otherwise, that would never got to where he gets 5 charges against him.
Yeah.
He'll get 2 probably because you didn't do what the cop told you to do. And if you were warned twice, hey, guess what?
If you use, again...
But call the PGA. If it's just down the road, call the PGA. Let them come get them. Get in their supercharged 4-wheeler.
Right.
And come pick them up
in
their $20,000 golf carts. Pick them up. Go get them.
And the great sports columnist, Pat Forty, has already written a column about this. And, I mean... When I read it, I was like, he's spot on, because he's like, we're more concerned with the world's #1 golfer making his tee time than we are about this
poor guy
person that was hit by a shuttle bus and was killed.
Absolutely. And shame on us.
That pretty much end of story.
Shame on us.
And you've got, police trying to, like you said, trying to navigate a very difficult situation, and in that case, you better listen to the police and the law enforcement.
Man, they got jurisdiction,
right?
That's law.
It's not too tough.
That's law.
Comply, and there's no problem.
Be patient.
Yeah,
and even if you missed your tee time,
Yeah.
You had an excuse, a legitimate.
It's not like you overslept
excuse.
or something.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
You and surely Scheffler was smart enough to call someone at the PGA. Obviously, he called his manager.
Yep.
You know, listen, to overreact the way that took place, to get cuffed. The worst thing that you should have got was a barking because you didn't listen.
Yeah.
Or you tried to move when you shouldn't move and were told not to move, despite what your quote-unquote this time tee time is. You know, we can always sit here and look back at how we handled things. I'm not even going to dismiss the fact that maybe the cops were a little overzealous.
Right.
They could have been.
But
it didn't have to get to that point.
highly doubt they just throw him in handcuffs for their own satisfaction. You know,
if he tries to move against
overstep his bounds.
He did more than just hit the pedal and to see what they were going to do.
So this story, needless to say, is evolving by the minute. And like I said, he's playing golf, and we'll see how his, I guess, golf game, for who cares, is affected over the weekend. But just a bizarre story to
sometimes
start off the day.
Sometimes you just gotta say okay.
Yeah, deep breath.
I know I've been pampered my entire professional golf career.
Yeah, more important things in life than golf.
There just is. Any sport.
Even if you are a professional golfer and you're at the top of your game, yada yada.
I don't know.
Nuts.
And there should be no way that tee time is more important than anything else.
Right. And he had time too. If you look at the pictures of him in handcuffs, it wasn't like he was in his golf attire.
Yeah.
So obviously he wasn't overly crunched, and then he had time to go to the driving range and warm up. So again, it wasn't like 5 minutes from tee time.
And I'm sure there's a little bit to the fact that the media loves to overblow things so they can make it bigger than what it probably actually was. But here's the deal. There's pictures of you leaving in handcuffs. So you did more than just talk back to an officer.
Yeah, if nothing else, it's a very bad look for the PGA.
It's a bad look for Scheffler.
Yeah.
So that's too bad that had to happen. But I'm sorry. I'm not siding on PGA's side with this.
No.
Just not.
And again, like we discussed, at the end of the day, a person lost their life.
That should be your top story.
Right.
I wonder if that's going to make any of these papers who've been writing already about the incident.
Yeah.
If they're going to have a little after post about the person that lost their life.
Right. Because it was a domino effect after that, obviously.
Exactly right. So, I don't know. That's just sad to see. Sad to see. Sad it had that all happen that way. But, so there needs to be some things that need to get learned and maybe some step back to reality kind of discussions that take place. All right. This is Sports Talk on the Max. 98.3 FM on your dial. We're also on our YouTube channel live right now. As soon as we're done, you can catch us on our Facebook page. But our YouTube stream is Max 98.3 stream ! That's Max 98.3 stream ! If you want to join us, YouTube live. But again, following this, we'll have it on our Facebook page. All right, what's next?
We've got, of course, a big game in the NBA playoffs tonight. The Pacers are back home facing a do-or-die situation, trailing the Knicks 3-2 after Tuesday night's lopsided loss to the Knicks. Was not Rick Carlisle, the Pacers coach, was not too happy, to say the least, about his team's effort in their 30-point loss. And somehow, some way, they got to find a way to slow down Brunson. I mean, he went off again for 44 points, and if the Pacers are fortunate enough to force a Game 7, they also have to find a way to win in Madison Square Garden, which they haven't done yet in this series.
Well, if the Pacers can just do what they did in Game 4, they'll be okay. What did they do in Game 4? They played good defense. They were aggressive on the ball, on both offense and defense. And your players stepped up and hit. Everybody did in Game 4. And New York got off to a quick start. Turnovers started happening. Untimely plays and buckets that were normally easy in Game 3 and 4 were not easy back in New York. And that was actually been the biggest, that's been the big blowout at New York. I mean, the first 2 games were decided by 8, 9 points, something like that.
Right, yeah, it was real. Actually, the first 3 games were very
But the third game was at Indy. I'm talking at New York City.
Yeah, you're right.
Talking at MSG.
Yeah, especially Game 1 could have, the Pacers were right there, had a chance to win that game. And
Halliburton is going to have to really have a game. I don't know how he's going to do it because he's going to have the target. The Knicks have been targeting him. But this is the game where he's got to figure out a way to create even more opportunities. And then give him the ball. And let him do his thing. But everybody else has been shooting well, too. I mean, it's not like you got to reinvent the wheel. I'm just saying you probably need to figure out a way to get Halliburton the ball a few more times.
Well, he only had 13 in the last game. That's not going to cut it.
That's not going to help.
No.
That's just not going to help. So I like where the Pacers are still. They're back home to Gainbridge, and it's a different atmosphere. And I think I think the Pacers will win this one, but they got to get off to a good start like they did. Broken record here. Start like you did in Game 4.
Yeah.
You do that, you'll win. You'll win big again.
Well, and like we said, if they are able to, and they've been great at home, I don't think they haven't lost in the NBA playoffs yet in 2 rounds at home, but in that Game 4 that you were talking about, Tony, they just dominated the glass. Yeah. And they also dominated the tempo. The Pacers want to play as fast as humanly possible. And they have that full court, 3/4 court press that causes problems. Then if you look at Game 5, it was just the opposite. The Knicks were able to slow it down enough, keep the Pacers from, or at least limited their transition opportunities and didn't get killed on the glass. And again, if the Pacers are to win 2 in a row, they've got to do a number on the Knicks on the glass, and they've got to do a number on them in transition.
Yeah.
Or it's season over.
Yeah. And again,
I don't think it's going to matter who wins this series because the giant monster, the Celtics, are looming, and they look like world champions.
Yeah, they do.
I mean,
yes, they do.
They're a heck of a basketball team.
Yeah. Okay,
and how about speaking? Oh, we're going to go Indiana Fever.
Yeah,
of course,
Fever last night played the first home game.
Great crowd, as expected.
Sold out, wasn't it?
Yeah,
if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
It was sold out. First of all, the Liberty got some really good players.
Oh yes,
New York Liberty's got some really good players, and I don't know. Caitlin Clark just didn't look like she fit in what was going on. She stood around a lot. I thought she did because the offensive play wasn't including her unless they had to reverse. And then they had to get her back in. Caitlin Clark's going to have problems here in the first half of the season because, she's part of the cream of the crop. And there's girls who want to prove that Caitlin Clark isn't all that in a bag of chips. Right. Can she be? Yes. She could be a big old Ruffles bag if she wants to be. The problem is she's got people who are just as talented as her that know the pace of the game. They know their offense, the opponent's offense, a little bit more because they study it. I think this is a growing period for Caitlin. She finished for
9 points
and 7 rebounds.
Yeah, she was just 1 of 7 from 3.
Yeah, and so
her first 2 games, she's really struggled shooting the basketball.
And by the way, I appreciate what the Indiana Fever are doing with their ball court, but man, that's a lot of distracting colors. Good God. I mean, it was tough for me to concentrate.
Fits right into the pro basketball carnival atmosphere, doesn't it?
Yeah, in its own way. But I would have a problem as a player playing on
Yeah.
that court. I really would. They got to figure out a way to dumb it down a little bit so you can better have a concentration on the ball.
Well, from a fan standpoint, though, pops. I loved it as a fan. Now playing on it
Yeah.
might be a different story.
Hey, listen.
I mean,
it was Hollywood.
yep.
It was done in Hollywood fashion. I'm just saying, if I was a player, I wouldn't have liked it.
And Caitlin's finding out
much.
pro hoops isn't as glamorous, maybe. And like you
that's
had,
what I
in the
just
last
said.
few weeks leading up to her WNBA debut in a regular season game, you had warned her it's just a different. It's tough, and
It's a different caliber of play.
You're facing the
best.
opponent's best defender.
Well, you're facing
And the best of the best
women basketball
who are
players
the most
in the United
talented, most
States.
athletic. And you're right. There's a lot of standing for Caitlin, at least that I've seen in these first two games. And that league is just like the NBA. There's a ton of one-on-one. And so I'm watching last night. I'm like, set a screen for her. Well, they don't really set a ton of screen. Now they do sometimes in the NBA. Those people are those athletes are have that world-class burst, and they can beat
They're strong.
almost anybody off the bounce. And at least I thought I saw Caitlin try to force some shots because you're only open for a split second.
Yeah, it's not like you were in college ball.
They recover really quick. And I think also what you're seeing is the Fever just aren't a very strong team.
They're not a strong team. You could just see there is part of Caitlin's struggle is she's not quite sure what the offense is trying to accomplish.
Right.
I mean, you could tell if you read her body language, just go back and watch. You can even just watch a quarter. Go to the fourth quarter and look at Caitlin's body language. It says it all. She's watching. Caitlin's not a watcher, but she has to watch because this is how the offense is ran.
Well, and on this team, I don't think she's going to have any choice.
I know she doesn't. No, she doesn't have a choice.
This is a bottom feeder team. There's a reason they had the number one pick. And you watch, Brianna Stewart for the Liberty. I mean, she's a two-time MVP of that league. She goes off for 31 last time. I mean, you're talking about one of the world's greatest players who's going to be a huge part, if not the part, on what'll be our gold medal winning team in the upcoming Olympics. I mean, as you said, and then the Liberty also had that phenomenal score out of Oregon that she's a dynamite. I mean, she's like all WNBA. And, who on the Fever is
close to that.
all that?
Caitlin's not close to that.
No.
Whether we want to admit it or not.
And she's going to need help.
She is going to need help. She's
Just
gonna,
like Michael Jordan had Scottie Pippen, right?
There's that factor, but the other factor is just understanding what role she has to play.
Right.
What is that role? The press conference, not last night's, but the one before. The coach was talking about trying to get her acclimated into their system. That's fine, but are you paying attention to whether or not it's a system that's working for her? Otherwise, you're wasting both of your times.
But and it may be a case of a system that's dictated, I'm sure it is, on your personnel. And they might not, I'm sure not in public, but behind closed doors, the coaching staff would tell you, our personnel isn't up to snuff. And, Bob Kravitz, the great Indianapolis columnist who now writes for The Athletic, he had a great tweet this morning about, Caitlin Clark has about as much pressure as Peyton Manning had his rookie season for the Indianapolis Colts that Manning had. And remember, Manning's rookie season was filled with struggles, threw a ton of interceptions.
Sure was.
And again, to piggyback on what Tony said, there's going to be a lot of growing pains for Caitlin Clark. Now, I would like, and it hasn't been determined, I'd love to, I think it's a foregone conclusion that she's going to be named to the United States roster for the Olympics. I'd love to see her play.
With the Brianna Stewart.
Right, exactly right. In that kind of format, European style basketball, where it is wide open and so much dictated on the 3-point shot. But I just think it's going to, she had 20 points in the opener against Connecticut, but those were hard to come by. And just like, I think last night she had 2 at halftime and just didn't shoot well. But again.
Well, how many turnovers she had in the
first game? She double digits.
Yes,
I don't know what she had last night.
That was a big bummer to her.
Yeah.
That was a big letdown to her.
But you make those passes and they get picked in that league.
And again, it to me was a look of, all this extra model shots and commercials and crap that I'm doing. Maybe I could have spent a little bit more, every ounce of my extra time in the court or on the court, or figuring out how to handle pressure and doing those little things. And she's had a lot of that time to do that, but has gone and done. She's fulfilling her contract, and I get it. She's fulfilling her contracts. Listen, she's not stupid. I do this. I probably do the same thing she's doing. I'm making my money now. I can make my money.
Sure.
And
unlike every other professional sport, the WNBA turnaround is unbelievable. I mean, they just got out of. She was just playing for Iowa a few weeks ago. I mean, they don't have they don't have mini camps and all that. Boom, you're thrown into the season.
Yeah.
And again, I think we're seeing Tony. She's having a difficult time, as every rookie does, adjusting to the speed of the game. And that's
the players,
right? And the players
are not collegiate players.
No.
They are better than collegiate players.
If you have a chance to watch one of the Fevers games, just watch the guard quickness. I mean, it is off the charts. I mean, those women can flat out play.
They can make a play. They can make a play. So like I said, better days are coming. Don't know when. Caitlin's got to do a different approach than what she's done in the past, or that she's been used to doing, because she's got to adjust.
Yeah,
she has to understand the role. And this is where your good head coach comes in and says, "This is what we want you to do." Now I know that's been said. But when the whole play's on that left side, and she's standing there right side of the bucket by herself, I don't know how many freaking times I saw it, and then there's still no way to get the ball to her, that's a system problem.
Right. And what's the easy?
Now, it could be, you know what? But I'm sitting here saying that it could be an inter-player problem. Maybe there's some of her teammates that just don't like the fact that she's been getting all the limelight. And that I can guarantee you that happens.
Oh, sure.
I mean, so maybe it's a combination of both.
And what's the easiest player to defend? The one that stands still.
Exactly.
A lot. You watched Brunson tonight for the Knicks. And again, they're standing in the NBA and a lot of ISO, one-on-one. But Brunson, he works to get his shot. And again, Brunson's been in the league for a while. He was at Villanova in 2017, 2018. So, like you said, it's going to take time. I will say this. I was just asking myself, I was watching with my mom and my wife last night. I mean, hey, I've never tuned in to watch a WNBA game. And it is, I think, really cool, the buzz that she has created. And then they were showing clips of some of the little girls and boys with Caitlin Clark jerseys, autograph. I mean, what a great person to grow the sport of women's basketball. And she's in the perfect location.
Well, she made it. She made that very clear in her press, in the presser. She goes, "I remember being that little girl.
Right.
I remember being that one who wanted that autographed jersey. I wanted to be the one to get close to her just to see what greatness was like." So she gets it. That's
right.
That's one of CeCe's better qualities. Now, last night there wasn't a whole lot of that, but I think a lot of that has to do with frustration and so. And
it'll take a lot of maturity on her part as the losses mount, because the 2 games I've watched, and I haven't watched them from start to finish, But boy, the Fever, to me, they're not going to win a lot of ball games.
No. All right, 12:31. Rusty Nixon had a chance to talk with Aaron Butcher, who has come back home to be the next head coach of the Marion University Ancilla College Chargers. We'll come back and talk with him in just a bit. All right, our very own Rusty Nixon had a chance to talk with Aaron Butcher, who has just announced the new Ancilla College Marion University basketball coach for the men's side. And here's Rusty with more.
I mean, you remember where it was at, and like I tell people, the expectation, it drove me nuts. Like my first year there, if we lost by less than 10 the next day at school, like people were happy. I mean, I'd have professors coming up, like, man, that was a great game. We were so close. I'm like, what do you mean? Like we lost? Like what? But then, like that last year, I remember one game, I forget who we were playing. It might have been Grand Rapids, but like we got off to a really slow start. And you look at the people across the way and you can just tell, like, we're not up 20. What's the matter?
Yeah.
And so those expectations changed, which is good. But I think like people are like, well, that's where it was at before. You're going to get right back there. And like, it's not easy to do that. So, that's the goal though.
Well, it can be easy to have a good season. It's not easy to have a lot of good seasons.
Yeah.
Well, I'm telling you, I walk me through this too. I mean, it wasn't like you were unsuccessful when you left. It isn't like you've been unsuccessful since you left and the things you've gone to do. What was the process of saying, hey, I think I want to go back there and do it again?
Yeah, I think, I had been out of college coaching for 4 years. So the last year at Ancilla, we had that really good year that allowed me to, the job down at Northern Oklahoma College had presented itself. And, we 2020 during the time of the pandemic, we moved back. Athletic director job had opened up there at Tippecanoe Valley, and family came back home and kind of thought, okay, we'll just kind of slide into the transition or administrative side and, start with that. And, after 2 years of doing that, I realized like, okay, I'm not done coaching. I still want to do it. But I did think that the college was probably done. It's hard college jobs are hard to get, and it's hard to advance and all that stuff. And so, I got hired up here at Hobart, and Hobart was great. I mean, the administration was great. The community's great. It's a great school system. All those things, and we got it to a much better spot than where it was. But I think when, the opportunity at Marion Ancilla, which is still kind of going to take me a little bit to get used to saying. Had presented itself. I was like, okay, like, thought that the college part was done, but now it's an opportunity to go back. Very small learning curve somewhere where you've already been. You kind of know the ins and outs. And then in meeting with them, just seeing what Marion is doing there. I mean, I think there's a lot of good momentum there. I think Marion's doing a lot of good things since they've taken it over. And it was just kind of I think a culmination of all those things. Just talked about it a lot with my wife, and that was the events that led up to it.
Is there any maybe old school spirit involved there too? You played at Ancilla, didn't you?
I was on the team. I was on the team. I don't know. I think if they kept a record book of every point scored, I think you would see 4 points, and those all came in one game. So my career high was 4.
Yeah, that's the same answer I give when people ask me if I played baseball at Plymouth. I went to the games in uniform.
Yeah. But, no, I was on the team back in 2003 and 2004. Yeah. I think I got a picture to prove it somewhere.
It's always good to have photographic evidence in case it comes up. Talk about the journey for you. I mean, you've done a little bit of everything in the last 4 years. The AD's job, the high school coaching, college coaching. I mean, I could tell when you were AD at Valley, the number of games I saw that Valley wasn't playing in. I could tell you were kind of yearning to get back at it.
Yeah, it's been. I mean, I think you look at some of these people and it's like, okay, they start at this spot. And it's just very linear. Okay, you work your way, you go here, you take this step, and then, but for a lot of people, it's not that way. And it's like, I go back to start. I mean, you decide you want to be a college basketball coach, and so for 3 years, you're volunteering at Indiana Wesleyan, and fortunately, I've got a great wife that's been supportive. I mean, our daughter was young at that time, but you're putting time into that, and you're pursuing it. And then, like I said, after Ancilla, you kind of, I think there was a lot of uncertainty during that time when the pandemic started. And there was, you talk about small colleges and financial certainty and what was going to happen with jobs. And I think really what led us back here to that job at Valley was just, all the uncertainty at that time, and felt like, that's going to get the family back home, and, it's stable.
Yeah.
And so we did that. But that's why I go back to, like, at the end of that time, after that second year it ended, it's like, I've got to pursue something. I'm not ready just to be an AD yet. And so, ultimately that led us here. And like I said, it's been a good experience. I mean, it is a tough basketball job here at Hobart, but, it wasn't like, we were necessarily like going out, hey, we're getting the heck out of here. I mean, it is a really good spot. And so they said for that to lead back to Marion and Ancilla, it was unique, but I think just the understanding and low learning curve and all those things there is it's crazy that it led back there, but we're excited it did.
Talk about your family a little bit, because I can vouch for the fact that I was never at an Ancilla game you were coaching that both your daughter and your wife weren't at and involved with what was going on. That has to be a huge support for you.
Yeah, no question. I mean, it was like I said, I mean, from starting out from volunteering at Indiana Wesleyan and working your way up. I mean, Allison's been supportive every step of the way, and Callie, I mean, man, for how many practices, she's sat in and been through over the years and all that. I think, I like to think it's maybe helped her in her athletic journey a little bit from just being around, good kids and good programs and seeing how those work. But yeah, they're I like to think we're a great team, and they're definitely supportive, and man, like the fact that Callie just I tell you, Rusty, the thing yesterday, like it was crazy. We had our first recruit visit, and we walk in the commons, the dining hall, and it's like the first thought was like, man, last time I was in here, like Callie was 9.
Yeah.
Or well, she was 9 we started, but like 10 our last year there. Like
Yep.
she just turned 17.
Yeah.
And it's like, man, that part's wild. But yeah, they're excited to be back and get back to that level and be there at those games again for sure.
Rusty Nixon with Aaron Butcher. And if you want to catch the full story, you can go to the Pilot News. It'll be in the sports section there. But glad to have Aaron Butcher back home where he belongs, him and his family. And, he really did turn the men's basketball program around when it was nothing. And, Brian Pearson ended up joining him on that staff. Pearson took over when Aaron left, and success just kept following. And that says a lot about, what Aaron set as the ground, foundation. I'm anxious to see how things are going to be even more so now that he's back, because he just also took on Joe Grindle as an assistant basketball coach. And Joel resigned as the Plymouth head basketball coach. It's going to be interesting to see how those two vibe. It's really going to be good. Joel's been wanting to kind of dabble a little bit in the collegiate level, and now he's got the opportunity to do that. I think Joel's going to be outstanding, especially when it comes to our sizes inside. Even more so, I'm more interested in how the recruiting is going to go for Aaron Butcher. Normally, a lot of the recruiting has come from a few towns in Michigan and South Bend, but mostly in the region in the Northwest.
I was going to say Chicagoland's been
It's
quite
been,
fruitful for
the region, not
Right.
Chicago itself, but the region.
Lake County.
Lake County
Yep.
has drawn an awful lot of, brought a lot of talent here. So it'll be interesting to see the directions Aaron's going to go with the scouting part of things. But here's what I do know: it's going to feel a lot more. What's the term I want to use? Grounded, maybe. You're not going to have a lot of, well, do we need to be worrying about this or do we need to be worrying about that? No. The one thing Ancilla has done lately that has been, as a alumni and third generation attendee, they have finally got it down to where they now use the model called the right fit, having the right fit. And the students that are coming in that are already beginning to commit, it's on a good number, good pace, better than it's been. And so we're seeing the changes slowly but surely. Dr. Tucker is an amazing leader and cheerleader for Ancilla and has been that way for so many years. I'm very excited to see this direction Ancilla's going. I'm glad to see AB's back as head coach. I'm glad to see Joe Grindle is going to be part of it because they bring in a lot of experience. And, there's an expectation. There's going to be an expectation here. And not just because he's a first-year coach. It's a mentality. You heard him kind of talk about that in the beginning of it. How he had to, Aaron had to change the mentality of fans who would, all 10, 15 of them that would come to these games. It wasn't a lot. Teams weren't all the greatest. They worked hard. After AB's first year, they really were working hard. And they were fun to watch. And I was part of that. We were broadcasting games. I really am. I'm excited. I'm really super excited that he's back. He's going to be coaching. Grindle's going to be right by his side. Plymouth, they're going to have to find another coach. They're already in the process of doing that. It's just part of how it is anymore.
It's been some lean years at Plymouth, and you wonder.
It's been lean years for Ancilla too, with the exception of a couple. But
how long it might take for the Pilgrims to turn it around. I mean, 24-45 Joel was in his 3 years. Didn't win a sectional game, and he inherited a program I think that had won 2 games the previous year.
Yeah.
So usually high school sports comes in cycles, as you and I both know, Tony, and it will be very interesting to see which direction Plymouth goes to lead a program that, when I was growing up was, you talk about tradition rich. I mean, I forgot who I was talking to, but, I grew up in Anderson and went to North Central in Indianapolis. But you thought of Northern Indiana basketball, and Plymouth was easily one of the 3 places you mentioned. That's when I lived in Anderson, when you had single class basketball. Yeah. And of course, a lot of that had to do with Scott Skiles and that magical run. But, even beyond that, as we've gotten to, in our adult lives, meet some people that played basketball for the Pilgrims, and, the expectation at that school and that program was to win. Mm-hmm. And no matter what sport you were talking about, but we're talking about basketball right now, and win big in basketball. And, it just has been lean, and you hope whoever the new person is that they turn to can get it turned around, because it's, like I said, a tradition-rich program, and one we certainly want to see get back and winning big.
It's been tough to be a head coach for one reason or another. Don't know what the answer to that is. Here's the other aspect is, in the last handful of years that have been lean, kids are different.
Yep.
Kids are different right now. And if you got kids who want to be involved in athletics, out of a group of 20, you're averaging maybe 5 to 6 that are actually all in, don't think, don't sleep anything else but baseball or basketball or football. When you don't have a full team like that, it's just tough, And we also live in an era where it's tough for parents to leave their hands out of the cookie jar.
Right.
It really is, and that's another factor. And that's not just a Plymouth thing. That's every school.
Oh, right. Thing. Yeah, that's nationwide.
But the next guy who comes in, I'm not even sure if they keep it local. And I mean by that is, I'm another former Plymouth player. I'm not sure that's still going to be enough. We heard Aaron Butcher talk about changing the culture of a college. You're going to have to change the culture here going on, because the wins and losses have now been looked at and concentrated on so much now. Everybody's looking for an immediate result.
And that's the era we live in, too.
And that's this is what makes coaching tougher.
Yep.
Because you can't get that win-loss result the way you want it unless you got a whole team that loves the sport they're playing to put that above a win-loss record. And it's tough to do, like you just said a second ago, it's because that's what everybody looks at. Walks in the hallway, and maybe Buddies is one of the players was saying, "God, you guys suck."
Yeah.
Whether they're kind of joking, but they're kind of not, because they're basing it on your wins and losses. So it's going to be a tough gig. And this would be the same scenario if John Glenn was going through it. Well, they're
you're going to see at Glenn. They've been close to the top of the mountain.
It's going to be interesting to see what happens there. New crop of kids are going to be coming in.
You don't have the Bryson Hannas and the Chase Millers.
No, you don't. And so, like I'm saying, it's every school kind of goes through this part, The question is, what's the patience? What's the time limit for patience that fans could expect?
Yeah, and this,
and what? Well, first of all, the fans themselves want to win now. I mean, who can blame them? I mean, fans are fans, man. Sometimes a few of us live too vicariously through high schoolers, but the fact of the matter is, you're fans and you want them to do good. You want to continue to support them. You want all that. But do the kids understand that?
Well,
and what does it mean to them? Because I will tell you, out of pure observation, for the last 10 years, it's been tough to get a full team to be committed to one sport, work at being successful in that sport, and then executing that will, that drive, that need to hurt when you lose a game. Those days are almost gone, unfortunately.
right.
As a whole team collectively. Now, Tony, I know there's people right now saying, Tony, that's a bunch of crap. He goes, if they didn't want to play the sport, why would they be out there? Well, listen, I mean, one of the reasons why I didn't go play football, one of the reasons I didn't go play basketball, because I was a baseball dude. And even back in my day, when I played 4 years varsity, not everybody was sold in on playing at sport. There were other things that they had prioritized in their life, but we needed them to concentrate for 2.5 hours between the ball diamond. It's a tough sell. But you think about this, and you followed our Plymouth teams who went to state, the Bremen softball team who went to state, Glenn making it to the semi-states. Those teams had every single player on that team that loved the game, even if they were a 3-sport player. They loved the game. They pushed each other to be good, to be better each and every day in practice. They sacrificed for each other. Their parents sacrificed for each other. And by the way, those parents of those winning teams, they let the coach. They knew where their place was, even if their kid wasn't a starter.
Well, and that's the problem you get into when you have losing, is because then everybody thinks, they could be a better coach. Yeah. Their kids should be playing. And you mentioned those great teams of the past. They also have the one component all in common, that is the standout player or two. And I think the quote unquote role players feed off, at least through my eyes. That's what I saw at Glenn through a Bryce and Hannah. And I thought
Aaron Koffel,
it was
softball,
contagious.
Kyle Benz,
their grit
Randy
and determination.
Davis.
Exactly.
Right.
And their competitiveness. And that's, I think.
But my point of that is, Doug, you do need that, because you need a leader in a winning ball club. You need a leader to say, hey, quit screwing around.
Yep.
We need you paying attention here. The coach just can't do that. He can't be everything. He can have his pulse on it. And you know what? If he's told that Johnny Smith and Bubba Joe are at the end of the dugout sitting here talking PlayStation, then he could do something about it.
Yeah.
But he relies on some of his leaders, team captains especially, to step up and let him know what the pulse of the dugout is, or what the pulse of the sideline is. That's a tough gig. It's a tough gig to be a captain. But we've had a lot of great captains, and sometimes there's just. You can try and try and try, but it becomes so stressful. You're like, okay, just talk, just stay away from me. You're better leaving us alone than the rest of us trying to win a ball game. And
the other other problem I see is, and it's in all of our area schools, you're having to play multiple sports. And I bring that up because, and I know the regular season records say for Plymouth hasn't been good, but once you get into the state tournament and the teams that advance in that state tournament, not always, but a large percentage of those guys
Are one sport.
Are one sport. Exactly
One
right.
sport.
And whereas when Tony and I were playing and growing up, you didn't have the year-round play travel sports in your picked sport. So, for instance,
But I picked one sport.
right, when you played high school baseball, then you in the summer was somewhat open. And now, just look at South Bend St. Joe, for instance, the team we've covered that beat Glenn in the regional. Look at how many of those kids, I would venture to say, if not all their roster, all but one or two play travel basketball after their season concludes. And how many multiple sport players does a St. Joe have? I'm not sure, but, in Plymouth, although they're moving down from 4A to 3A, who do you have to go through? Marion, St. Joe, South Bend, Washington, who, oh, by the way, South Bend, Washington has the Reynolds kid who's a D1 recruit. Again, in my world, I start looking at programs and teams, how many have high caliber players that are getting looked at by not just Division I, but D2 and maybe D3 schools. There just aren't that many. I mean, we covered it was Central Noble that had the kid that went to Wisconsin and now transferred to Nebraska. I mean, when you and I watched that game, we knew this kid's a difference maker. I mean, he can create, he can do anything. When's the last time, other than Glenn's run last year to the semi-state, which, by the way, was filled with players that were multi-sport. I mean, Chase Miller, 3-sport, Shrap Willie, 2-sport, Bryson
But if
Hanna,
you ask Chase
2-sport.
Miller what his favorite sport is,
Right. He's going on to college to play baseball. Bryson Hanna went on to play baseball.
both were good. Both were good.
Going to play baseball,
but they got more time in swinging
And what
the
did
stick
they-
than they were shooting hoops.
And I was going to say,
But
what did they play in the
commit.
offseason?
And I'm going to tell you, this is where a good coach comes in. When your coach says, "Hey, can you give me a few extra shots this summer?"
Right.
Both Brayson and Chase did, because they knew whether their role was going to be as a captain
Yep.
on the team.
But even
That
Travis,
was their inspiration. But it was also because of Travis, and he was Travis is, there's not a lot of gray area with him. This is what I have expected. This is the role I want you to play. So you know exactly where you're going to be.
But even Travis had to grin and bear it, as much as it gnawed at him that, his son, which again, credit him for being the father and going with what your son, the sport he loved, but he had to grin and bear his son in the off season, and he would talk to you and me about it, playing travel baseball. And I'm sure as a basketball coach, he probably thought in his head, wonder what could have been. I mean, Bryson had an illustrious high school basketball career, obviously. But, had he dedicated himself to basketball instead of baseball? And again, that's a basketball coach. I just think the coaches, especially in our area, are fighting a lot, like you alluded to.
Well, they are smaller
And
schools, especially.
smaller schools.
Smaller
Even
schools
Plymouth.
especially.
Plymouth, I mean, it depends on who you talk to. Are they a big school? Are they a small school? They're not a small school. They're not a gigantic school. They're somewhere in between. But even that, how many football guys are playing basketball for Plymouth?
And it even goes up in the collegiate level. I mean, a lot of D1 recruits were multiple sport players, but when you look at their numbers, which sport were they the best in?
Right.
Why did they end up going to football? Because that was the sport they were the best in. And I know that my argument is completely opposite of what multi-sport is. I believe one should concentrate on one sport. If it gives you the opportunity from your freshman year to senior year to concentrate on the sport that you love, and that's the key. You got to love the sport. I knew my limitations. I knew I wasn't going to be able to shoot a basketball well, and I'd probably get my ass kicked every time I was on a line. I was not that physical. But man, I could hit. Man, I could feel. That's why baseball was always the first love for me. And that's why I didn't go to multiple sports. I stayed with baseball.
Well,
4
nowadays,
years, and I made varsity.
You can play the one sport year round.
You can
now.
still do that. But
Right.
my point is, those are far and few now.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
Right.
far and few
Yep.
that are going to excel and be that leader that a coach needs on a team. And again, using baseball as the example, on a baseball team. You know, being that guy, wanting to take on the challenges, those kids are getting less and less because it's a lot of work. And, you know, that's where we're at. That's where we're at. You know, we can go back and for you Plymouth people, you remember Kyle Bench. Well, Scott Skiles, good God, look at him. He was a great multi-player, had good numbers in all of his sports, but where was he the best at? Where was he the best at?
Yep.
Basketball. That was his love. That was his passion, man. You know, the kid was blessed. The kid was so blessed. He'd be the first to tell you he was blessed with skill. You know, and like I said, that's why I feel the multi-sport is great. It has its benefits of learning how to win, lose, compete. You're absolutely right. But you can also learn how to compete against players of the same sport. You know, just as easily. But you got to have that approach. It all takes that same approach. You got to want to be good.
I would contend that, like the Scott Skiles, the Chris Kramer, who went on to have a great career at Purdue, they have a drive inside, and that's what, at least in my experiences, I've seen with the D1 caliber athletes.
Okay.
Where they wake up,
they have that drive.
Well, and it might have been even, say, you in baseball, where you woke up and you were just craving to get on the diamond. You were craving to get in the batting cage, for instance. Those kind of players like the Skiles, they're craving to get in the gym and shoot. I mean, nowadays you even read of the players that are gym rats. You know, Braden Smith at Purdue, you can't keep him off a basketball court, even when he was in Westfield. Now, again, he went to a huge high school, was that one sport player. But, you know, if I was the AD or if I was a coach, sitting coach, I would look, how many of my players are basketball junkies or baseball junkies or football junkies? Because if you don't have enough of those guys,
you're right.
I can guarantee you're dead in the water.
You will not have the year you should have.
And it's like a family. It comes from home too. You know, or mom and or dad, you know, pushing that player. And again, not at the sacrifice of grades, but, you know, you have to, there's accountability all throughout the family tree.
There's a reason. I mean, Michael Jordan, Deion Sanders, they tried the multiple sport thing.
Right.
They couldn't do it.
Yeah.
They couldn't. Were they successful? Yeah. Did they have the skill set to be better? Yeah. But were they fully committed? You can't tell me they were for the periods of time that they lasted.
Right.
And they're going to say, well, James seemed to have no problem. Bo Jackson didn't seem to have no problem. Yeah. Go ask them what was their favorite sport.
I think the concerning thing at Plymouth is, like we said, you have ebbs and flows in sports and how good your sports teams are
Ebbs
at the
and
high
flows
school,
of good
high school
kids.
level.
Of kids.
Sometimes you have a good cluster of players and you hit the jackpot.
Yeah. But
why
fourth year comes around,
right?
You're looking ahead to see what we got coming up.
My question would be, why has it been so lean for Plymouth for an extended period of time?
Well, here's another thing we haven't even got. We're overtime. We got to get out of here. Now we're going to get yelled at. But there are so many other things for kids to do now.
And you're exactly right. Yep.
Sometimes you lose that passion for football. How many kids start the freshman, sophomore year and then
because it's a heck of a commitment.
I don't want to go junior. I don't want to play anymore.
And that
happens.
People don't see the January lifting weights early in the morning. I mean, that's a year-round commitment too.
It is.
And practicing in July, and then you only win 1, 2, 3 ball games. That's tough. Because then you sit at your house and you're like, why am I going to put all this effort in and we're only going to win 2-3 ball games? I mean, forget this.
Yep. All right, we got to get out of here. We're way over time. And I'm not. So, Lenny, if you're going to text me, I'm not going to answer. We'll do this again next Friday, lunchtime. Join us for Sports Talk on the Max. For Doug Griffith, Tony Ross, have a wonderful day. And I'll see you tomorrow. We've got 2 remotes. We're going to be at 9 a.m. at the Rise and Roll Bakery, and then at the big grand opening celebration for Aspire Remax down in Culver. That's going to be a little party there on Main Street. So come have some fun with us. That's tomorrow here on Max 98.3. So long, everybody.